Welcome to another episode of Conversation with Lamp. I'm your host, James Lampion, and my guest today is the author of the book Path To Manhood, Mr. Dane Hawkins. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Man, first of all, congratulations on finishing the book.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a long time coming for me.
You know, it's funny. I remember we had talked about it like years ago. I feel like we talked about it, and you were saying you was thinking about doing it, and then I don't remember hearing anything. And then next thing I know, boom, it was done.
So it actually started before we really knew each other.
Okay.
Um, this is actually a story that came to me when I was in grad school, uh, 2002, 2003 time frame.
Wow.
So that long ago, yeah. Um, and it just sort of stuck with me over a long period of time. So when we had that conversation, it was probably when I was getting more motivated to start writing again.
Yeah, because you know what, and that's you told me you had like I feel like you told me you had like writer's block or something.
Well, not necessarily writer's block. So what happened was that I I do engineering IT for my trade, for my career. So I got out of grad school and had fell in love with writing as a hobby in undergrad and in grad school. Got out of grad school and it was time to start the career.
Mm.
So I'm not making no money writing, so that was just like that was a hobby that just got pushed to the side as I built a career and you know dated, trying to find the one and all of that good stuff that we do as young men in our 20s. And fast forward, I don't know, nearly 13 to 15 years or so, um, I hadn't really written anything more on it. I think I wrote 65 pages when I was in grad school. And then I get my wife, well, she was my girlfriend at the time, and I tell her about it. And she was like, oh, that's a cool hobby, da da da. And then as we progress, I start to tell her more and open up more to her about it. She then asks to read it. And I was like, I don't know about that. And then, we got engaged. And when we got engaged, I gave her a copy of it so she could read it, electronic copy, so she could read it. Um, and after she read it, she was like, it's actually good. You need to finish that. Because she's an avid book reader.
Mhm.
She's like, it's actually good. You need to finish that. So this is probably the time where I started mentioning to people, I like to write, and because I found somebody who actually enjoyed something I wrote. So now I feel like I can let the cat out of the bag more. My close boys from college knew that I had that hobby of writing, but most people that I was friends with or associated with didn't know that on a day-to-day interaction. So that's probably when I told you that, like when it got to that point.
How far along was you in the book when she read it?
Oh, it was still that 65 pages.
Oh, 65.
Yeah, I hadn't. So, all right, so let's dive in. So, when I was in grad school, I wanted to write a story that would be something that me as a college student would want to read.
Hmm.
Then I started my career, and I always sort of had ideas for books when I wasn't writing. I had a blog for a little bit. So I was still doing a little bit of writing on the blog, but that was just, opinion based about what's going on in the world. I also, did things that were creative in nature, but nothing that was like published to the public. But I wasn't writing, but I always came up with ideas for books. Like in that time period where I wasn't writing anything before I let her read it, I had I had conversations with family members and stuff, and was like, I have ideas for like 6 or 7 books. And they'd be like, really? And I would run down those ideas that I had, but I wasn't writing anything. It was just I guess it was always on my heart. It never left me. So fast forward to me letting her read it, and she was so hyped. She became my cheerleader and sort of put a battery in my back a little bit. But I still wasn't doing it because it was like all this time I haven't been writing. I don't know where to start. I don't know how, I'm not writing for a living. So how do I get to the point that I actively become a writer again? And it's probably a little fear of taking off in there. You know what I mean? You get apprehensive about, well, what if it don't work? What if I don't know what I'm doing? What if I get to a point where it's just trash? What if I let her? What if I mess up what she already likes and it doesn't go well? Stuff like that. It plays in your head. One thing I always tell people is, with your creativity, don't create ways to stop yourself from getting your ideas and your writing out there.
Wait a minute, what do you mean by that?
Because I'm a creative as a writer. I'm very creative because I come up with ideas for books during this whole time. I was also coming up with ideas of why I shouldn't be writing.
Oh,
I don't have time. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. What would be the next steps? If I finished it, how do I publish? All of that stuff. Or just me creating ideas of why I shouldn't be writing rather than doing the thing I've wanted to do for that whole 15-year period.
So how did you overcome that?
My wife.
Wow.
So the couple of instances, my wife got tired of telling me to write and me not writing. And she sort of got frustrated with it because my wife is more of a, I'm gonna be your biggest cheerleader. I'm gonna help you, get through. And I love that about her. Her spirit is always uplifting in that way. But if you're not responding to it, for those people who are like that, it could be like punching a brick wall because she's always on go. She's like, well, why you not going with me? I'm doing this for you.
Okay.
So she starts to get frustrated naturally. So we get to a point, and I have to sort of caveat this with, this is where smartphone, everything, I'm no longer using my laptop. So my laptop dies. So I don't even have a working laptop in the house for me to write with because I do everything on the internet on my phone. I never opened a laptop. I tried to open a laptop and was like, oh, this one is dead. It's a brick now. Toss it in the corner. And it was sitting there for like a year. So we go to one of her friends' parties. It was like a cookout gathering type of thing. And there was a guy there that they all went to college with that was back from California. They hadn't seen in years. He was out in California writing shows, being in writing rooms and stuff like that. And he came up and he said, I never met you. I introduced myself to him. He introduced himself to me. He went on about his business. She walked up. She was like, oh, yeah, you met my friend that's a writer? And I was like, he's a writer? She was like, yeah, he used to write on da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, did you tell him that I write? She was like, no, because you don't. Now, the thing about me is I'm a tough love person. So that sort of resonated more than the, come on, right.
Yeah.
So it sort of stuck with me. And I started like bringing it up like, dang, yeah, you sort of got me with that one. And she was like, look, if you promise to start writing this book, I'll buy you a laptop myself. And this was the summer of 2019. And I was like, well, go ahead, put your money where your mouth is. And then she started looking for laptops. And I was like, oh, calm down. So we found a little cheap Chromebook that I could use just for writing. And I was going to buy it. She was like, no, I said it. So we went half.
Oh, y'all were half.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to actually write the book?
So at that point, I started going through the 65 pages that I had already written. I started going back through this fiction story that is not my life, that I want everyone to know that's not about me. And just to see where, remind myself of where I was taking this story and, what the concepts was. Because in 2002, 2003, I was in college. This was where I was in life.
Right.
In 2019, this is no longer where I am in life.
Yeah.
And what I realized is, as I started to write it, or as I started to look through that stuff, all that stuff came right back to me.
Okay.
But I had one of those weird memories that I sort of remember, like, almost everything. So I started going back through and be like, oh, I need to add to this. This doesn't make sense, or this needs to be clarified better. I need more detail here. And, grammar, and stuff like that. And I wasn't really doing a lot, but it was more just acclimating myself into the writing process at first. So she got me the laptop end of August, beginning of September. So the very end of the summer. 4 or 5 months later, Kobe died, and I'm a huge Lakers fan. So I'm seeing all of this stuff on my social media about Mamba mentality, be focused, go after what you want. make sure you go after, your dreams, and, just the drive that Kobe had was being flooded in the market. All of that stuff we were all seeing it.
Mama mentality.
Yeah, we were all seeing it. And, me being a Lakers fan, I'm seeing it a lot. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to write a book. So it's sort of leaving an impression. My wife is doing her side business. And I'm seeing her every night, kids to bed, in the office. Like, she getting it. He telling me to get it. I'm about to get it. And then a month after that, the world shut down.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not going nowhere. I'm not doing nothing. Dude, you ain't got no job, Craig. You know what I mean?
Well, you're still working, right?
No, that's a quote from Friday.
No, I know that, but I'm like, wait a minute.
No, but it sort of felt like that. I was still working, but I was working from home. The kids wasn't going nowhere. We put them to bed at 8:30 back then. They were still little.
Yeah.
So 8:30, that's 9 to midnight. It's time to write. I carved out my little space in the corner. Say goodnight to everybody, and just.
So because you picked it back up late, do you feel like it made it easier or harder for you to finish it?
So the thing that I found was interesting. I was a better writer now, even though I hadn't been writing this entire time. Just because I'm a thinker, I guess. I attribute it to that. And I'm a storyteller by nature. When I talk to people, I tell stories.
Okay.
So I think what happened is I've matured as a person, and just the way that I communicate has matured. So the way that I can convey that communication on paper matured. So all of those details that I said I needed to add, I didn't see them back in 2003. But in 2020, they were glaring. So when I got through those 65 pages turned into 100. And then I threw another 350 on top of them.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, because I told you before we started, I didn't read a book.
Right.
And one of the reasons I didn't read a book is because I didn't want my questions to be framed like what me just keep thinking about the book. So I wanted to read it after. I know that probably don't make sense to you with my mind a little.
Either way, I mean, I'm dying for somebody to ask me questions about the book, but I understand asking the questions about how the book was made as well.
Yeah.
They're both intriguing questions for me.
So when I saw that, right, when I first got my copy and I opened it up, right, I'm not gonna lie, my first thought was, oh shit, it's a real. Because
You know how many of my boys have done that to me. I had my homeboy say, "You told me the book was thick, but I didn't know it was Old Testament thick."
we get, because now, like, most people write, because people writing more books,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, at the most, I mean, I'm not an avid reader, but from what I've seen, 220 is considered a long book.
A lot of times, and in me doing my research as I'm writing the book, I'm looking at how many words are in the book, and I started researching what's the size of an average book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was past the size of an average book already when I started researching how long should I make my book. So I was like, okay, I got to find a stopping point. This isn't the whole story.
Oh wow.
So I'm actually working on the second book. I'm not very far along at all. I'm first chapter of the sequel right now because I've been focusing on marketing, promoting, trying to figure out how to sell books. 'Cause I'm not a salesman, but I had to find a stopping point for the story of these characters in this book because it goes beyond what's in this book. So I don't know that this story would have been proper had I stopped it earlier in the story. Tried to do 3 instead of 2. But the second book more than likely won't be as long as this one.
So what was the average size of a book?
So they say between, I know word count rather than page.
Oh, right.
The font changes the page numbers and stuff. So word count, they say between 75,000 words to 100,000 words.
And what's your
Mine is like 190,000 words. So I do have a large book. There's no doubt about that. But the funny thing is, I've seen a lot of books whose page counts were way higher than that.
Really?
Yes. It just depends on the genre. But I've seen a lot of Black fiction. Like that's what actually made me feel better about my book because I was like, man, my book is too long.
I was just about to ask you, was you nervous?
But if you go in Barnes and Noble and you go to Black fiction, drama, literature, and stuff like that, 500-page books,
Really?
550-page books, 400-page books. So I'm not that far off from that specific genre, because what they say, the average page of a book, they talking about fact books. They talking about informational books. They're not just talking about a specific genre.
Right.
So in my genre, it's probably not many books that's less than 350. Those are those are small, and it's because it's a fiction novel. So you got to develop characters. It's like watching a movie or watching a show. You got to put the details in words that you would see on the screen generally. Then you can't describe how somebody looks in a short period of time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's you can't make sense of why this character would be motivated this way, and then the person right next to him is motivated another way, without telling what happened to them to get them to that point.
Mm.
At least briefly. At least briefly. But
Okay.
but that adds pages. And that detail is it's the difference between, oh, he just told me what happened, or, oh, yo, he just told me a story.
Got you.
You know what I mean? So it's
You that and speaking of that character development, you was you said you get a lot from like the people who close to you, like they felt like that was they in the book. So
this is another point I do want to come back to about how I wrote the book. But it's funny because, like, for example, I have a younger sister, 4 years younger than me. She got the book. She said, "Okay, it's 4 guys. I know who your 3 best friends were in college. So which one of these is you?" And I was like, "None of them are me." And then she got to chapter 2, and then she was like, "All right, I'm still lost. Like, I figured I would be able to realize it eventually, but which one is you?" And I was like, "I told you, none of them are me." She got to chapter 3. She was like, "No, I see who the 4 are now. So your boys are A, B, C, and D. So who is who from your character?" Like,
Right. Trying to get
and I'm
you.
like, I'm like, "Stop it. Just read the book." And then halfway through the book, she's like, "Why would you do this?" And then at the end of the book, she was like, "Oh, these really aren't you." I was like, "I told you it's not me." But and then she just kept going back and forth with me. And at one point I told her, I said, "None of them are me, but they're all me."
Ooh.
Like, if you really want to be real, when I started the book in college, my idea was I wanted to write a book that I would want to read.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, in grad school, started to notice how I had changed as a person. My dynamics from being much more introverted to starting to become extroverted felt like 2 different people. How I, was growing to be more social, more confident, and, just coming into my own. I really felt like I was almost becoming different people. And like, my cousin that he'll tell you, when we were kids, he had a more dominant personality than me. That is not the case now,
Oh.
because I had a dramatic shift, and an unusual shift than most people do. Most people go from being super extroverted, they get tainted by life, and then they be like, "Nah, let me just chill and be to myself in my very small circle."
Right.
I was always kid in the corner, just observing, quiet. And then as I got more confident in life, I sort of cocoon butterfly out of the cocoon type of thing, and was more willing to be more social and more out in society. So I, it was a different shift than I saw other people doing. And I was like, these are different characters. So I essentially was like, I could take 4 different aspects of my personality and flesh them out into 4 completely different people, from who I was versus who I'm becoming now. And that's who ended up becoming the 4 main characters in the book. Now, as I became a man and came back to it, that sort of changed. But that was where I started with the idea.
Wow. So you initially when you started, it was kind of like you your mindset was this is gonna be based on me.
No,
Right.
no, it wasn't going to be based on me. It was the characters' personalities are based on parts of my personality.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna write fiction stories. I never intended to write about my friends and family in this book.
Mhm.
I'll write my memoir one day when but they all know I'm about to write a book, and I'm gonna just say your initial, but you're gonna know it's you.
Wow. So how does it make you feel when people can see so much of themselves in you?
Um, so I don't really view it that way. Like if I've had a friend who read the book. He read it in I think 3 days. He went on vacation, read it in 3 days, got back from vacation, and was ranting and raving about how much he loved the book. And he was like, "I see a little bit of me in all of these characters,
Mm.
but I don't necessarily see any more of me in these characters than he does at this point." I expected anybody who, speaking specifically to the male characters, anybody who grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, which is when the book is set, and had experiences becoming men dealing with how to be independent for the first time, relationships, love, loss, success and failure, learning to deal with both of those, all of that stuff. We all went through that.
Mhm.
So these characters are so different between the four of them, but they had to find a way to get through this stuff and they ended up building their brotherhood. We've all gone through that too.
Mhm.
So anybody that has gone through those experiences can look at these characters and be like, oh, I was more like that dude. Or I
Well,
was more like that dude. Or my boy, I went to college with that dude. Or you know what I mean? And then I feel the same way about the women in the book as well. Like I asked my wife explicitly, do these women feel real to you? She's like, yeah.
mm,
It's like, that's me. Like,
man,
and I ain't know my wife back then. So I wanted all of the characters to feel authentic to anybody who picks up the book.
was there a character that was a little harder to develop?
I don't know if there was any characters that were harder to develop as much as it was hard to write certain parts of the book. So what I discovered in the process of writing the book is that whole time that I wasn't writing, that 13 to 15-year period that I wasn't writing,
Mhm.
but I was still coming up with book ideas.
Mhm.
A lot of those 7 or 8 book ideas became a new character or became a couple of chapters or
Mm.
became a storyline that had a part of the story. But I didn't realize when I was coming up with those ideas that that's what it was. But as I started writing, I was like, oh, the idea I had about that's this person. And I know exactly where this story is going. So I guess my mind just works weird like that because of my memory. Those ideas for books that I was carrying in my head, I had been writing the book the whole time and didn't know.
Mm.
So so when it came to putting pen to paper, I didn't realize once I opened the floodgates, I would be typing and look at the clock and be like 12:15. I gotta go to bed. I gotta go to work in the morning. But because it was I opened the floodgates and it just started pouring out, which is why I had to find a space to stop.
Ah. So that's another thing. So like, what do you? Because I'm pretty fascinated with the writing process part, right? So when you see that, right, you writing and you type and you look over, you're like, oh shit, it's 12 o'clock. I gotta stop. Like, how do you even sleep? Because I know for me, right, like if I got something I'm thinking about,
I don't sleep well anyway. That just unfortunately for me, I don't have I am and my wife would co-sign this if she were here. I am the type of person that I have very vivid dreams,
mm,
but when I do have those vivid dreams, I'm like, oh, that's a character. Oh, this is what's supposed to happen with that person. Because in my sleep, I'm still thinking about it. So that was happening a lot when I was young.
yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
I'm writing and I'm getting to a chapter and I'm like, man, I did that storyline with this character, and we focus on this part of the story right now, but that's sort of left open ended. And I got just in the back of my mind, I got to come back to that. I started having dreams about stuff that could happen as a result of some of the things, and then I'm like, oh, there it is, I got it. And then when I get to that point in the book, I'm like, this is where it's supposed to go.
Mm,
So I was very fortunate that in writing, I realized that once I opened the flow, it flowed pretty well. Of course, everybody has nights where they sit down and they like, yo, it's just not coming to me tonight. I'm just not feeling it.
so
Um,
what do you do when that happens?
so I actually was researching that during that process too, because it would be frustrating because I'd be like, yo, 6 nights straight, I'm good. And then that 7th night, like, I just can't get into it tonight. Like, what is going on? Um, and a lot of writers say you need to have your setting or almost like a mood music or a mood. So when I first started experiencing that early on in the writing process, because it took me about 2 years to write it. Early on in that first year, what I would do is I pour a glass of wine or something, and like being like I said, that dark corner, put some music on in the earbud down real low, just to almost not jazz, but just almost that jazz feel. You just hear something, the elevator music in the background, um, and it would sort of help me some. Also, what I would do is I would go back a chapter and just start looking at it from an editor's perspective. Like, does this sentence make sense? Is the grammar correct? Am I taking the story in the right direction? If I read back, maybe not even a whole chapter, sometimes you read back 10 pages, it'll get you into the flow of where you were.
Okay.
So that helped a lot. I did have to stop drinking while I was writing, though. It made me realize why people get addicted to stuff when they're creators, because it sort of opens the floodgates. Like, I wasn't taking drugs myself, but like a Jimi Hendrix that was on heroin back in the day, he was probably his most creative when he was taking heroin, which is why he kept taking it.
Ooh.
But then you become addicted because you're like, if your life is like, yo, I gotta make this thing. I have to create this. This is what I live for. And you start drinking to fuel it or drugging to fuel it. You medicate yourself to death.
When you say when you was drinking like hard liquor?
No, I was drinking wine.
Oh,
I
okay.
kept it the wine, but even that, I was like, yeah, I don't need to keep doing this, because it was like I saw the result. And it was like, but then that becomes enticing. So then, eventually I'm like, well, I could do an old fashioned, or you know what I'm saying, and then it just
Oh.
becomes a thing. So I made a point to not do that.
And do you remember like how far along the process? Like, was it like a month? Was it 2 months? Where you say, okay, I gotta change that part. Like what?
I mean, I still drink wine. I still have drinks. So
I'm talking about when
don't
you're
drink.
creating.
Oh, maybe a month. I mean, I started telling my wife. It was like, it's crazy. Like, the nights that I drink wine, I feel like I write more. And she was like, "Oh, that's cool," because we ain't thinking nothing of it. But then maybe 2 months later, I'm like, I don't need to be looking at the wine bottle every time I want to go write. So it was more that. It was like, it's probably a couple months, and I was like, yeah, maybe I need to just get in the habit of doing this without drinking the
I
wine.
mean, was it a hard adjustment for
No,
you?
no,
Okay.
because it wasn't my intent when I first started. So it was just like, all right, don't.
So let me clarify why I asked that, because you notice yourself like when you was drinking,
Yeah.
you felt like you were more creative. So that's why I said, was it hard? Because it's like, well, damn, if like mentally you gotta think, well, if I stop, am I still gonna be as creative?
I never had that issue, because I felt like I was creative enough to do this before I ever, so it was, the story was always on my heart, and it was even more pressing at that time. So I didn't feel like I didn't have the story. It was just like hitting those, writer blocks, that the when you get just in that funk where it's just like, your mind just isn't, the wheels aren't turning as fast as they were. So it wasn't like I thought I would never be able to finish writing this. It was just like, okay, I just got to figure out a different way to deal with if I have writer's block.
I just thought about this. So did you struggle with, because you said it was so, in your mind, you had so much you could write, so you had to figure out a way to end it. Like, was it a struggle for you to figure that part out?
Um, I don't know if I would say it was a struggle. More or less, it was me wrestling with whether this was correct. Because I had two places that I was thinking about. And I was like, well, if I go this way, then I start the next book with this. But then if I move ahead and hand here, where do I start the book with? And that was the problem. Where do I start the next book?
Mm.
More than, so I knew there was 2 points that would be good stopping parts. So it was like, either of these two places, I could probably do a good ending for this book. But how do I start the next one after that? So that was more of the struggle for me.
Have you started on the next?
Yeah, so I'm on the first chapter of the second book.
Any idea how long you want the next one to be?
Page wise, no. I know I don't. I know my goal is to make it probably about 100 pages less than this one.
Why?
Um, just from the response I get from people who aren't prototypical readers, honestly, black men.
Mhm.
They get intimidated by the size of the book,
Really?
which I understand, and a lot of people want audio books these days, and it audiobooks are a monster in and of themselves. So that's a whole nother discussion. But just I would like to think that I could finish the whole story in 350 or somewhere around that. And I I think that would be more palatable to people. Like people, like I said, people get intimidated when they see the size of this book. So maybe something a little smaller would be easier for people to digest. Plus, I imagine a lot of people who have read this one, they'll get to the conclusion faster. And it won't feel like it's long drawn out for no reason if I shrink it some. Plus, I've told quite a bit of what I wanted to tell in this story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's going to hurt the creative? Because
No,
if you're going just what you're going into it with a certain page, because you didn't. I don't think
so
you went into this one with a page count,
so
right?
let me I didn't. So let me clarify.
Okay.
Goal is not stopping what comes out. If I start writing and I look up and it's 400 pages and then it's 400 pages.
Okay.
Like I'm writing it for honestly, I'm writing it for me. I'm not writing it for the audience to be okay. I just think if it is that size, the audience will probably receive it a little better.
Okay. Gotcha.
And that's probably just based on what I hear from people. It may not be true. That's just the response that I get from the people who know me and are willing to actually say something
Mm.
about this book.
What was it like for you when you typed that last word and you was done? Like,
I wanted to keep going
ready?
because it's not the whole story.
I mean, you didn't feel like joy, like it's complete. Is the
Oh,
this
I
part?
was very happy,
Oh, okay, okay,
but I still wanted to keep going.
okay.
But so people always say, man, you did the hard part. No, I didn't. I did the easy part. The hard part is figuring how to publish, finding a book cover, finding an editor, figuring out how to promote and market. I don't know how to do none of that stuff.
Hold on, wait a minute. You feel like the
Writing
promotion?
was the easy part for me. All the stuff that comes after you say, man, I wrote a book. What now? I didn't know how to do any of that stuff.
So is do you think that's the hardest part for most people or just for you?
Well, I can't speak for anybody else.
Okay.
It's absolutely the hardest part for me. I can imagine how other creative people would feel like it's the hardest part for them too, because typically we're left brained or right brained.
Mhm.
I'm one of those weird folks that got a little bit of both. I'm very analytical in my career, but I'm very creative in my passion.
Okay.
So my career still isn't in sales though. Like I said, it's in engineering, IT. So I still don't know how to sell, market, and promote stuff because that's just not what I do. I can tell stories all day. I can talk to you. And I can tell stories about the past. I can tell stories about ideas I've had. I can do that all day. So I can write stories, but how to create a book cover, how to find the people, like I got very creative and was really talking to people a lot about how to do this stuff. I had a friend who used to write for the Baltimore Sun. I reached out to him like, how do I get an editor? I don't know how to do that. I've never talked to an editor a day in my life. So then, Fiverr, just looking at the type of services I could possibly, contract out through Fiverr and stuff like that. It took a while. It took me quite a bit of time to try and figure that out. And then literary agents. I don't know anything about literary agents. What send literary agents a query. What does that mean? God, I didn't know what that meant. So, and when you're trying to publish, you look at all avenues. I self-publish, but that's not where I started.
Oh, you wanted to publish it.
So I as I was writing it, I was like, I'll just self-publish. Didn't know how to do it, but I was like, I'll just self-publish. Then as I got about halfway through, probably 3/4 of the way through the book, I started having on my heart that maybe I'm not supposed to be self-published. Maybe I'm supposed to be trying to go a different route to maybe get it seen by more people, by the masses, so to speak. And I talked to my wife about it, and we prayed about it, and that's the route I decided to go when I was done trying to get a literary agent. That is so frustrating
Mm.
because it's telling somebody telling you you're not good enough over and over and over again when you've poured your heart into something. It's
Man, and a big project.
yeah. So so it I told my wife during that time, I am really coming to grips with my relationship with rejection. I think I spent a big part of my life doing all I could to avoid rejection, and having to find a literary agent completely turned that on his head. And it was like, you have to run towards rejection. Somebody has to tell you, nah, that ain't it, homie. All right, well, let me ask the person sitting right next to you. I don't like it. All right, let me ask the person. Like, it's you have to accept and expect that rejection, or you gonna crumble looking for a literary agent.
It,
And I didn't get one.
did it make you question your work?
No,
Okay.
no, it didn't make me question my work. It made me question what they were looking for.
Oh,
Because how many stories do we get about Black men in college?
mm, that's a good
How
one.
many stories do we get about Black people in college? Because when it's all said and done, this is a book about Black people in college. It's told through the lens of these 4 Black men, but it's a lot of women in this book. So it's a story about Black people in college
Mm.
at an HBCU in Atlanta. How many of those stories we get? No,
Yeah, that's a
nobody.
good point.
Book, show, movie. People not telling those stories. We got A Different World. We got School Days.
Yeah.
We got Higher Learning, but that ain't a HBCU, but it's Black people in college. But when was the last time we
I
got?
was just about to say, because when you name these, I'm like, damn,
Look how long ago they
that
were.
was early night.
Yeah, so look how long ago they were.
Yeah.
We don't get these stories. So it made me question whether they wanted to tell this story. It didn't really make me question my story. I, I don't want to sound like cocky or anything, but I've never felt like this wasn't a good story.
Mhm.
My grammar might not be perfect, but I've never felt like this wasn't a good story. I've always felt like this is a story that probably should be told and needs to be told. And people would, if they really could read the story or, hear the story, if I had an audiobook, they would probably really enjoy it. It's just getting it out there.
You mentioned the audio book. Is that something you consider, or
I've considered it. It's just difficult to do an audiobook because hosting an audiobook online, paying for the space, paying people to do the reading, and paying for the sound editing and all of that stuff, all of those prices, there's additional prices. So it's it costs money to self-publish a book. It costs a lot of money. So I was trying to wait until I saw some return.
Mhm.
Then I could take that return and invest it in possible audiobook. But it just cost so much, so I hadn't got to that step yet.
You would? I mean, you got a really good voice, a good speaker voice. You wouldn't read it yourself?
um I don't want to, honestly. I would rather, and I need more than one voice. I need female voices too. So
Oh shit!
like it's a fiction story.
Right.
I'm not. You ain't gonna see me in no wig talking about, hey girl, hey nah.
And it's not gonna hit the same.
Yeah, she doing it right, right.
Right.
So I mean, I could do one man and one woman. So I mean, I
Ah.
could do it that way. Just have a woman read anytime a woman is speaking, and me or whatever man it is whenever there's a man speaking. But um, I would rather just start writing the next one and let somebody else do that. Honestly, just I don't. I had that fear of spending the next 15 years not writing like I did
Mm.
with this one. So I don't want it to be that long before the next one comes back out. Comes out, excuse me.
Do you have a target date for the next one?
Uh it's so fluid because I was done this over a year before it actually came out. I spent 9 months looking for a literary agent.
Really?
I got turned down by like 40 people.
You spent 9 months looking for one?
Yeah, 9 months. Then I spent 3 months trying to come up with the cover because I hadn't worked on that. Because if I got a literary agent and they got the manuscript, they going to determine what they want for the cover. They going to determine if it needs to be edited again, they're gonna probably tell me they want me to cut somebody out of the story because it's so long. If we cut this character out and take his part of the storyline out, we can cut out 70 pages.
Ooh.
Yeah, when you go to those publishing companies, they want it their way. And I was researching all of that, and it was something I was like, look, if I feel like I'm being pushed this way, that must be God talking to me. So I'm gonna follow it. But I was worried about it. What I realized is I think there was a learning process that I was supposed to go through. Like I had to learn about the literary processes that I didn't understand yet before I published myself. I had to learn how to deal with rejection for myself, do that process. I think it was just things that I was supposed to learn, which is why I was being pushed that way. And then when I got to a certain point, I was like, I don't think this isn't the way I'm supposed to go. I am supposed to self-publish this. And that's when I made the pivot to go to self-publishing. And then I was like, okay, this after researching literary agents and publishing companies and what they do for you and all that stuff, then it was like, okay, I need this book cover.
Okay.
And I already had ideas in my mind for the book cover. I just had to start. I really literally started trying to draw stuff out on paper just to see if I was like, could I find somebody who can actually make a digital image that was similar to this? And the process for that was it's kind of interesting too, because I went through a lot of different phases. I went the AI route, started making AI images and started coming up with AI images myself that were totally different than where I started. And I started falling in love with some of those. And I had a few images and I was so picky because sort of like your baby. It's like, I want this and I want that for it. I want that for it. I want this for it. I want that for it. It got to have this part. I need to see a campus. I need to see 4 guys. I want them to have backpacks. This guy has to be this complexion. This guy has to be this height. This is how I described them in the book. And then my mother and my sister came in town and I had these 4 images that I was wrestling with. My mother and my sister came in town and my wife was like, show them the images. And I was showing them, my mom was like, they all look good. And my wife was like, that's what I keep telling him. But he said, they're not perfect. They're not perfect. My sister looked at it and she was like, which one do you like the best? And I was like, that one. She was like, use that one, dummy.
She would
Like, oh,
why did that one stand out the most?
that one stood out the most because it captured almost all of the elements that I wanted. It just, the guys didn't look exactly like I wanted them to look.
Okay.
But people who read the book aren't going to be like, oh, he says this person looks like that. Which one is he? That's not what you're going to do when you're reading the book. Right. But in my mind, that's what I'm going because I know what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah, because
So,
you wrote it.
I'm an overthinker. So my sister was like, you overthinking again, stop it. And I sat back and I was like, she right. And my wife was like, I've been telling you that.
Wait.
So then when I sent the image to the person that mocked up the cover for me. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this should have been the cover the whole time.
So we got to talk about something because you talked about it early, and I got to go back to it before we finish. That support system you had, your wife, mainly your wife. You mentioned your sister now, but we got to talk about your wife. Like, I just want you to talk more about that because um not everybody has that, that support system where, you may be down or you don't have that cheerleader. So
Right.
for you, I just want you to talk more about that, just having that.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most important aspects of this entire process. If not for my wife, this book wouldn't be written. I wouldn't have published a book. And I mean, if you read the acknowledgments, like you see how much that she meant to me in this process. She actually cried when she read it, so I did a good job on the acknowledgement. But but she was so important, man, because she is such a good motivator. And a lot of people don't have that. And a lot of people have that, and it's not necessarily their wise. But for me, my wife and I have always had great communication
Mhm.
in our relationship. And I think that's what sustains us the best out of all the different aspects of our relationship is her ability to intake my communication in the way that's comfortable for me and how I communicate. Sometimes we don't always communicate in the way that people receive it well. she is able to receive, even though she thinks I'm a little rough around the edges. In my communication, she still receives it well. And then she knows how to, you know, her communication is so pleasant. So I don't have any problems in that aspect, but she is able to help motivate and support me because she understands the way I think and communicate well. So it has been, and even now, like in promoting the book, she is huge. Sometimes I'm like, I need to start paying her because because my social media right now, I'm doing a lot on social media through my Instagram, and 97.5% of it is her. 95 to 97% of it is her. My wife is amazing. She is also very studious.
Mhm.
Like my wife started to get her doctorate 10 years after getting her master's with a baby and was still getting straight A's. And I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, and she was just staying up at night doing it, just like trying to get her doctorate. And then she decided that, once she got pregnant with the second baby, that she had to sit it to the side because it was too much. But she's a researcher. She just, her mind just works well in that way that she can organize. She's very organized, way more organized than me. Her organization probably helps me a lot as well. So, she's very, very intricate in me being able to do some of the things that I've done with this book and in life in general.
I want to wrap it up with this. What do you want the reader to experience reading the book? What do you want them to feel?
I want the readers to experience almost every emotion reading this book. I want I want people to read this book and feel like, yo, that was like my little cousin. Or that girl, I went to college with that girl. I remember her. I had a crush on that girl in college. Or, I want it to feel like a real story. I want it to feel authentic. I want you to have certain parts where you smiling, certain parts where you laughing, certain parts where you sad, certain parts where you mad at me, like, why would he do this? Certain parts where you like, yo, this dude trying to make me cry. Like, I want you to feel all your emotions reading this.
Man, you know what? I'm really glad to have this conversation with you. It was one of like I said, it was one of the reasons I didn't read it because I wanted to. I said, you know what? I need him to convince me to read it. Had I read it, I'd have been like, okay, well, I already read it. But I wanted to make sure, you get the listeners to want to read it, and I could tell for myself, I'm definitely gonna pick it up and I'm for start reading it. So your message definitely got across, man. Congratulations, because
Thank you. Thank you.
man, look, a book one is one thing to write a book, but it's another thing to write a book. It's detailed, good pages, 465. So clearly, you put your heart and soul into it. So I just hope everything works out and it gets to the people who need to read it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. It's for everybody. It's adult. They are in college, but they doing adult stuff. So don't be having your little 13-year-old, 14-year-old reading this thinking that it's okay. It is not.
Okay.
This zone. If you watch rated R movies, you can read this book.
Okay.
But it is it's the messages. Although kids today that's in college who read it might be like, they just getting cell phones. That might be weird to them, but there's nothing new under the sun. So the overall things that they go through would still relate to everybody, young and old.
Well, also before we end it, tell the people like how they can follow you and also how they could get a copy of the book.
So Path to Manhood is everywhere you buy books online. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. You can get it online anywhere. And you can follow me on IG at author_Dane C Hawkins. So that's probably the best place to follow me now. Website is almost done, still under construction. That'll be coming soon.
Okay. Well, again, man, congratulations and all the best with the book. And
Thank
we're
you.
looking forward to the next one too.
Yeah. Hopefully I can get the next one out in a couple of years, but no promises yet. No promises yet. Yeah, it is right.
And again, all the best, bro. Thank you. I want to take the time to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. I truly appreciate your support. You can follow me on Instagram at conversations_with_Lant. My Facebook is also Conversations with Lant. You can watch this episode on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe. And you can listen to it on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. Again, thank you all for listening and your support. Have a great day.